Hi, everybody. I have a special guest here today, Dr. Leslie Faerstein. And this is another woman that I have met on the internet. And this is what COVID did. It kind of made us look in different spots to connect with people. And I also connected with Nira, who is on another interview. But Dr. Leslie attracted me because on her, well, she was writing about age-related topics, women-related topics, but she had on her LinkedIn
Profile.
profile, "Not dead yet." I was like, oh, that's so
I
funny.
should be wearing that T-shirt today. I have one.
Oh, did you get a T-shirt made?
It was one. Yeah, I have one. Says not dead yet. Yeah.
That now, did you just happen to like think of that phrase, or like how did that come to be to put it on your LinkedIn profile?
Well, I think it's a phrase that people use. Oh, I'm not dead yet.
Yes, it
But
is.
I thought, at my age, and I thought it would stand out, and it would be funny, and it's true. So
It is. I mean, it did stand out to me because I had been feeling like I was put out the pasture myself because I had been applying for jobs and stuff, and I couldn't get a job to equate to what I was, like currently worth. So when I saw that, it really resonated. So that's how we became friends.
yeah.
And anyway, Dr. Leslie is so fascinating to me, and that's why I have brought her here to talk to her today. So Leslie is 73 years old, is that correct?
73. Yep.
And she's still working and she wants to continue to work. Can you tell us a little bit why you're so jazzed up in working in your current career and you just want to keep going? Like that's really unusual to be, at least in my little ecosystem. I don't know a lot of people your age working. So can you tell us how that came to be?
Well, that's always came to be. I remember when my daughter was born and my former husband and I were getting life insurance. And I remember the agent asking us, well, when do you think you'd retire? We were 30 at the time. And he said, oh, like around 60. And I said, never. So at 30, I knew I was never going to stop working. I mean, I
And
can't.
why is that? Like what is that feeling
Well, the
that you
feeling
never?
is, I mean, I was certainly raised in a family and with a mother and grandmother who were professionals and who worked. My mother did retire, so my grandmother retired. Um, but I just, it's like a friend of mine says, imagine a color you've never seen. And to me, retirement is imagine a color you've never seen. I can't even imagine it. I don't know what I would do. And I love working. And at this point, I've been lucky enough to, after certainly a spell from the time I was 66 until 72, I could not get a paying job. I had a clinical practice, psychotherapy practice here in New York, but I couldn't get any other kind of job. And then I was hired about a year and a half ago to become a clinical supervisor, to train and supervise pre-licensed psychotherapy clinicians, either with a master's in social work or a master's in counseling. And I love it. I just love doing it. Working
So
with people in their 20s. It's great.
so you were continuously working without gaps until you were 66. Is that correct?
That is correct. I took a little time off when I had my daughter. I I always said that by the time I'm 30, I'm going to have a doctorate and a baby. And she was born literally 3 days after my doctoral graduation. The
And how
picture,
old were you? 30?
I was 29.
20? Oh,
No, before I was 30. I'm mad. I
oh,
got
you
it in.
said before you were 30.
I
Oh,
was
I see.
30. So the graduation was in May, and I turned 30 in July of that year
Okay.
of 1980. Um, and so I took some time off, although I still kept seeing some clients and I was doing some consulting work, but I wasn't working full time. So that was maybe 2 years that I was doing that, and then I was ready to go back and found a job to start a New York State licensed mental health clinic for 4 physicians.
Okay.
Then
All right.
that
So working throughout raising your daughter and all the way up until 66. And then what happened when you were 66 that you had to stop working?
Well, I think I was hired to start and kind of set up a nonprofit organization. That came to an end. The funding stopped. It was being funded really by one individual, and I was 66. And after that, I thought, well, one good thing I could do was to be an interim executive director for other nonprofits. I went through some training for it. I thought, perfect. At my age, they know that they won't be hiring me. That's kind of the agreement when you're doing that. And I couldn't even get an interview. I mean, it blew my mind. And I really couldn't get a paying job. Yeah, as I said, I had my private practice, but it's been small until this job with Resilience Lab, where I'm training and supervising.
So why not just stay with your therapy practice? Why did you want to have like a I don't want to call it real job, but like a corporate nonprofit type of job?
For a couple of reasons. One thing I did after my daughter, after I started that nonprofit for these physicians, I decided that I wanted to start a New York State licensed nonprofit mental health clinic specializing in women with eating disorders. Now, this was the late 80s. There wasn't much being done in the way of eating disorders. And so the clinic that I started was the first one in New York State that specialized, that had it on the state license, that we specialized in eating disorders and women who had been sexually abused. And so I was running that, training clinicians in the way that I work with eating disorders, in the way that I was trained. Um, I was actually trained, for some of us who are older, by Susie Orbach, who wrote Fat is a Feminist Issue. I got one-on-one training with Susie, and then went to
Wow.
their institute to get supervision and trained in a feminist way of looking at eating disorders. And we could do a whole hour on that, but eating disorders. Um, so that's when I really started a private practice, because I wasn't taking a salary so I could pay the clinicians, and this way
Okay.
I could have some income. And I was a single parent. I was divorced at that point. Um, so when I left there, I was then hired to set up and run other nonprofits. And I never wanted to stop the clinical work, which is why I always kept the private practice. But there's no stability in that. So working in the nonprofit sector, I had an income, I had vacation, I had sick days.
Right.
Um,
It is actually a nice pairing, right? Because you both like work together
right. So I'd
for your
come home
career.
and I'd
Yeah.
see clients, here I am in my office. Um, so that worked. And now I've kind of come full circle where I'm back working full-time clinically.
Okay. I want to ask you now. So when you were 66 and then you stopped working, or you were not working at that point, what was the path for you to get to a paying job? Like what kinds of things did you do?
Well, what I would ask anybody, if they knew of anything, and I did through somebody I knew, was connected with someone who wanted to start a nonprofit working with women 50 plus who had taken a gap in their work career to either raise a child or take care of a sick family member. So I was working with that for about 2 years, but there was never any income. At which point I thought, well, if I'm not getting paid for this, I'd like to just do what I want to do, which was working on and talking about women and aging and body image. And so I left that, and eventually then transitioned into this job.
Okay. Was there, when you were applying for jobs, like I know that employers are very careful not to let on that they're not hiring you because you're old, but you're saying that you didn't even get interviews and you were probably just screened out immediately from your resume, which would have been chock full of experience and education.
Right.
So, I mean, it was sort of like quietly done. And that's how I felt, like I wasn't getting any bites and I should have been. And do you feel like it was the same thing? It was just like the silent treatment from the
Oh,
job?
absolutely. Yeah, because I have that kind of background. People would, figure I was of a certain age.
Right.
Um, look, we talk about all the isms. Ageism is alive and well, and the intersection of ageism and sexism, is like is a double whammy.
Yeah. Yeah. So you ended up at Resilience
Mhm.
finally. How did that opportunity come to you? Just through the job boards, or did you know someone?
I knew someone who
Oh, that
said,
was good.
another clinician who lived in a different state, but she said she'd heard about this. And she said to me one day, would you like to be a clinical supervisor? And I was like, hell yeah, tell me
Yeah.
about it.
So
And
you
with
knew
three
someone, and it was the
years,
networking, and you got it,
yes, I got it.
now you're
I'm the
mentoring.
oldest.
You,
Yes, I'm
you
training. I'm supervising and training clinicians, pre-licensed
clinicians who
clinicians,
are what, like in their 20s and
yeah,
30s.
primarily. Yeah.
Do you feel like really valued and respected at this company or nonprofit? Is it a nonprofit?
No, no,
It's
it's
a
not.
company. Okay.
It's kind of a startup. It's primarily virtual psychotherapy. Um,
Okay.
yes, and it was interesting because when I am the oldest person in the entire company, um, and when the way that it was set up is that you have a pod of 5 clinicians that you supervise, and you interview the clinician, and the clinician can interview you to see if you're a good fit. And I really thought at the beginning that who was going to want to work with me because I was so old. And I had more than the
Because
five.
of ageism, not because you weren't, I mean, because you were so old. When you say you were so old, you mean just because you of the
comparatively,
prejudices? Okay.
comparatively,
Oh, okay.
to them,
To
just
them.
graduated, got their masters. Um, and but what I found is that I had more than 5 people who wanted to work with me. I mean that, and recently I was once a month we have group supervision. And I was talking to my supervisees, and we were kind of talking about issues around ageism or all various um, issues around what's going on now. Um, and I said to them, I said, actually, I thought that I would have trouble finding supervisees. And they were like, no, we wanted to work with somebody who had your experience. So here was a field, at least, that people valued that
Mhm.
and realized that my working in the field for 50 years and 40 years with eating disorders, I could teach them something.
Yes, yes. And how do your supervisees react to you? Do you
Oh,
feel
it's great.
there's no, yeah, they don't have a problem with your age?
No, not at all. It's funny because for group supervision, everything is done virtually. And about a year or so ago, one of them said, we never meet anybody in person. And I said, well, let's do group supervision here in my office, and I'll get bagels and make coffee, and they love it. I mean, every month, we get to sit around the table and talk about cases and whatever else is going on clinically.
Mhm.
But we all like know each other. We see,
That's nice.
and I think the bagels are a nice draw.
So you got this job during COVID? I mean, I guess we're still in COVID. If no,
In
before
that case, yes. I mean, I got it in May of 22.
22, and before that, you were in Twisting the Plot. Is that when that
Oh,
started?
Twisting the Plot started. That was COVID.
That was 2020. So the
Yes,
job came after that.
right.
Well,
That wasn't a job. That was actually a lifesaver.
lifesaver.
That was at the point how things work. It was at the point that I had left the other nonprofit to be able to work on women and aging and body image. And I had coffee days before I went to Australia for a month. I met with 2 clinicians who I'd known through the other work, who had this company and program called Twisting the Plot, also for women 50 plus. How do you pivot into something different if you
Right. So what
want
is
to
this, an
change?
online program? Like, what do you mean a program?
Well, they do workshops. They have
Okay.
they have a podcast. They do write about, they have articles about this. And what they wanted to do is they wanted to put together 12 people, call it 12 women, 12 and 12, women 50 plus, who wanted to work on their own projects, whatever that project was. And I met them and I said, do you already have all 12? And they said, well, we're actually looking for one more person. Why? I'm like, I'm in. So that gave me the opportunity. And it then turned out a month later that it was COVID, during COVID. just really start doing the research, working on,
Are these ladies all in Manhattan where you
yeah.
are?
Well, we
Okay.
didn't meet, we didn't have, well, and we didn't meet in person because it was COVID.
Okay.
Um,
But it started before COVID, so it wasn't like a physical meeting ever.
no, it was,
Okay.
no, we had one later on because some people lived in Massachusetts and New
Oh,
Hampshire,
okay.
and everybody was based in New York. Only a couple of us actually were. Um, and it was great. I mean, we're all still in contact. Every month we have a meeting just to kind of see how we're doing and who's doing what. And
So it was mostly just to support each other and give feedback on the ideas that each individual was working on, which was their own project.
right, but the two founders, Hannah Starobin and Cecilia Dentino, gave us homework every month. I mean, we
Oh,
really, I mean, it was, they were trying to put together a course, like a year-long course, program support where every month you would meet and work on your project. And in between, you could certainly talk to other people. We met actually twice a month. Um, so it was great. I mean, here we were in COVID and I had a natural community of women, 50
that
plus.
was great timing.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
In fact, my first meeting with them, I was in Sydney and I had to get up like at 1 a.m. and they always kid me because I always make sure I have lipstick on, but I put makeup on. I'm like, I'm not meeting these people. 1 a.m. looking like I just got up. Um, um, and it lasted through the year. It was godsend for all of us. It really,
Yes. Yes. And I was reading your website and you were saying you, even though you had this group, you were still lonely and isolated because we really all were. But this was really like a light in the
oh,
tunnel, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So the project you worked on was well, I know it was ageism and well, tell us what.
And women. Well, working in the field of eating disorders, I was always aware of how obviously women view their bodies. But as I got older and friends of mine got older and clients of mine got older, I started to hear how they looked at their bodies in a little different way, certainly than a 15-year-old would or a 25-year-old would. And obviously our bodies, we go through perimenopause, menopause. I mean, our bodies start to change. There are all sorts of things that go on. And I really wanted to look at how we looked at ourselves, not just as aging, but in terms of our aging bodies. And, what we get in terms of, advertisements and social media and this whole anti-aging thing. What is that? We're against getting old? Oh, should we die? I mean, what
No,
does
I hate that
aging
term
even
too.
mean? It means nothing. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
We should be pro-aging.
It should just be aging.
Yes.
We're
We want to
aging.
live long, like take care of yourself. We're pro. We want to be 100
Right,
years old.
right. 100 years old and, still have
Everything. Everything working for the
most
most.
everything working. I'm facing knee surgery next month, so
Oh no.
but that's what happens. So so I really wanted to start looking at this, looking at research that's been done. What a surprise. Almost no research has been done um, on women in age and women in body aging,
As
body age.
usual.
Of course, and you can't even find much written about it other than, eh, you know, other than the negative parts of it. And then certainly on social media, which just feeds into it.
Mhm.
So I was looking, as I said, at both aging and ageism and sexism, and how we get caught as we age. The whole women and aging, and how women don't. Even just around as we all kind of let our hair go natural during
During
COVID,
COVID, yeah.
and it became a whole renaissance thing, on
Mhm.
social media.
Which is great. Yeah.
Oh, it was terrific. And I so admire those actors who, Frances McDormand, Annette Bening, I mean, Emma Thompson, who
Jane Fonda.
Jane Fonda, although she's had, well, yes and no. Jane Fonda does admit to having had an enormous amount of plastic surgery, cosmetic.
Oh, I was talking about the gray hair. Okay, yes, she
I'm
has.
sorry. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes. I just sort of segued into those who don't
Yeah,
do
okay.
anything.
Oh,
Jane
yeah,
Fonda,
she has.
she talks about how she the only reason she did it was because she could not continue to get work if she didn't look younger than her age. Um, which is a reality, I
It
mean,
is.
especially in
It
a field
is.
like that.
Well,
Uh,
look, you ran into it and they didn't even see you. They didn't even see your face.
right,
So,
right,
but
yeah,
let's talk about this some more because, first of all, no one's talking about it. But when we women age, our body image worsens, and it wasn't good to start with.
exactly.
And now when I look back at pictures of me, I'm like, what was I complaining about? I look great. What am I now? I don't look good. Now I look terrible. Now I'm awful. And also the ongoing battle with weight, because as we hit perimenopause, menopause, the weight is sticking and the metabolism changes, and you know it just never ends. Like we never are happy with our appearance and we're never happy with our weight, and it's not improving as we age. Like, do you want to talk about that? Do you have like a fix?
Yeah, right. Yeah, sure. Well, apparently Ozempic has become the fix. It's, and I can go on about that. But there, no, there have been a few studies that do show that women, as they get older, are not as obsessed about their body as they were when they were younger. However, those were done maybe 10 years ago. Actually, one was done in Australia. And I think that today it's we're just hit with it all the time. Um, and so many of our media icons, particularly someone like Oprah Winfrey, where we have followed her whole trajectory, her whole professional life, is now come out, with having used whether Ozempic or Wegovy or Mounjaro or whatever one she used, and has found the
What a disappointment.
ultimate gift. She calls
Yeah.
it. Um,
If
so I think
Oprah can't do it, we certainly can't do it without Ozempic or whatever it is she's using.
right, exactly. And I think that, and the other part of that is, of course, it's only for people who can afford it because it's off label using it
Mhm.
as a diabetic drug, for diabetes. Um, but I think that we have never felt safe in our bodies, that even historically, you go to the museums and you never see women's bodies portrayed the same way. They're thin, they're heavy, I mean, it keeps changing through the centuries. You look at men's, and I'm not saying that's good for men, but very consistently, it's been the upper body strength, it's been the warrior, it's been so many of the actors that we see. So that we've always been stuck having to follow culture. The the makeup, the cosmetic industry, I don't actually have the figures in front of me, but billions of dollars. I mean,
Mhm.
there's such an investment in keeping us feeling bad about our bodies that I think it's very hard not to, because there's such an emphasis on it. On try this or use this makeup. And now there's all this makeup for older women. There's lipsticks, there's, get rid of your wrinkles. It's Botox. So I think I have not found the answer about how do we stem the tide and how do we change it. But I do think that if we start looking at our accomplishments, at what makes us happy, is it really, if we lose a couple of pounds, we're never happy. As you said, when you look at pictures of yourself 10 years ago, you're like, what was I complaining about?
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. What were we complaining about? I will often with clients when we're working on body image say, can you find some pictures of yourself when you thought you were fat when you were younger? And they're sometimes like, well, I couldn't really find any. I'm like, exactly. you know. Or I didn't look at that time I felt so bad about myself and thought I looked terrible, but I look pretty good when I look back at it.
Right.
Like
Exactly.
I think it just gets worse with social media. I don't know what I don't have an answer to that except
Right.
working with with who you are and what's important, and really what we weigh is not important. I mean, it may be important if it's, somebody's morbidly obese and it's a health issue, but otherwise, that's not what's important.
Right,
What's
right.
important is who we are as people, as a person, how we feel about ourselves aside from weight.
So it's like an internal, you have to be happy with yourself internally because this is going to do whatever it's going to do.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I mean,
And that is, I think that's the crux of it. And how do we get that? That's the $1 million question. And I think for every single person, it's an individual journey, right? You can't say, oh, we'll start doing this and this and you'll be happy with yourself. You have to figure everything out for yourself
well, or you can figure it out with a therapist.
or
I mean,
with a therapist. And that's a nice thing about therapists, somebody,
there is another way to figure it
sounding
out.
board. Yeah. Yeah. But what are you seeing with regard to eating disorders for older women? I mean, are they still, is that even an issue or
Oh, it's a bigger issue. Oh,
it's a
no, it's a
bigger
bigger issue.
issue?
Yes, in fact, some of the intensive programs and inpatient programs have special programs for women over 40. They're seeing a real rise in anorexia. And that could be either somebody who had it earlier and never fully resolved it, someone who never had it and it started as a way to try and deal with body image and losing, getting yourself thin. Um, or it's somebody who, there were three, well, that one had anorexia when they were younger and then, or developed it when they were older. But they don't want to be obviously in units with 16, 17-year-olds, 12-year-olds.
Ah,
So
interesting.
there's now been opening up units for women over 40 to get treatment for the eating disorder. So the numbers have gone
Oh.
up, not down.
So what about like go forward another 20 years to my age? Like, are those numbers increasing to 60, 70? Or
I
is there data even? Like they probably don't even study it.
there's not a whole lot of data. I've seen women 40 plus is most of what I've seen. I don't I don't think by my age, for example, that's all of a sudden somebody develops
You don't
anorexia.
develop. No, but I would think like if you were 40, you might have it when you're 60 still, like, and go
Oh,
untreated. I mean,
oh, absolutely. Or it
yeah,
could have been
yeah,
untreated from the time you were 10. I mean, we see it really young and we see it now much older.
yeah.
So, and we see it across everybody. We see
Oh,
trans people, it's a way to kind of work with body shape. We see it with BIPOC, we see it with, it goes across every group.
yeah, yeah. I can't believe we still don't, like, even women my age will still not be, I don't know, healthy enough or well enough inside or have come to the point where like this is just the way it is, and I'm not going to continually strive to be super thin or to put all these chemicals in my face to, to appear a certain way. I think we need more role models like Frances McDormand, or like, hey, this is it. Like
This is
Jamie Curtis,
well,
right?
she says this is my history. She
Yeah, it
talks
is. It
one
is.
one place where she said this is about my son, where I've said, oh my God, and oh wow, and she says,
Yeah.
why would I want to get rid of that?
Right, 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 right.
Um, and the other part is from what we are just saying is who I am is not my body or my weight. I mean,
Oh, that
it's
reminds me. Well, I saw one of your quotes. Well, you did say that we have few realistic role models right now as we age. And you said we're valuable, not invisible. So
right.
it, just because no matter what we look like, we have so much value. And you're a perfect example. You've been working for decades and you have so much wisdom, and so few corporations, nonprofits see that. They should be like, oh my gosh, get her here. Like you are so invaluable just from all the knowledge, from the schooling. Like you're amazing. Like everybody should know you. And when I worked for private industry, I liked hiring older people. They were so chill. They just like knew the ropes and they were so smart and they didn't get upset by the corporate, nonsense. I was like, oh yeah, we've seen this a million times. It's a phase. Don't worry about it. It's nice to have people like that around. And, the fact that our society doesn't value that. Well, anyway, I
So,
wanted to ask you.
I was just going to say about the invisibility. Both my husband and I, we get in the elevator. Our building increasingly has a lot of younger people in it because of where we're
Mhm.
located, colleges, whatever. And we get in the elevator and we say, good morning, and they don't answer us.
Yes. Why?
It's
Why
like,
is
I don't, I mean, I want to go hello. I mean, I'm short, but I'm like, hello, I'm here. You know, they get off, get off the elevator. I say, have a nice day. They don't
Is it
answer.
stranger danger? What is it?
I don't think it's stranger danger. I think, very often, or then they'll pull out their phones. It just, it kind of baffles us that, especially in a building like mine, which is over 100 years old, and where people have just lived here forever, and you know everybody, and you always say good morning, hi, how are you doing? Nothing. It's it's weird. I'm sorry. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, um, the title of our podcast is "A Pebble in Your Shoe," and I was just wondering, now that you're at this point, you seem to be pretty settled and happy in your job. What is your current pebble in your shoe? Like, what is an obstacle that you're facing now?
My knee. I
So
would say
physical.
some health problems. I mean, not big health problems. I mean, this is what happens. I've put off and put off having knee replacement surgery because I didn't want it to interfere with work, but it has really interfered with my life, my lifestyle.
Mhm.
I'm a native New Yorker. I walked everywhere. I
Walk,
took
yeah.
the subway. I can't do stairs. I can't walk very far anymore. And when I was in Portugal visiting former family in-laws, um, 2 years in a row, it increasingly was clear that I had to deal with this. Portugal's very hilly. I couldn't do it. There were times I had to just stay in the car.
Mhm.
And so I finally said, I'm going to do it. And
And
I
when
know
was
for
it?
everybody, it's going to be okay. I mean, it's bad initially. I'm February 26th, I'm doing it. I had my
Okay.
first PT session yesterday, but
Oh, you need PT before you even have the surgery?
yeah. Yeah, well, my surgeon's really good. He also felt that this way I had a relationship with a
That's smart.
therapist ahead of time. He said, you don't want to start when you're in pain. Um, so yeah, so I'm starting next couple of weeks,
Oh,
twice a
that's
week.
fascinating. I've never heard of starting before you have the surgery. That's
I
awesome.
hadn't either. I mean, I was like, makes sense. And try to strengthen, the muscles around the knee prior to surgery. So
And are you just telling your employer that you need a knee replacement?
well, we're in a situation where it's not, we actually get paid per person that we supervise. So we don't have a situation where it's like paid time off. If the supervisors do,
Oh, okay. Okay.
clinicians do. No, I'm telling them, I figured I'd take a week off. So I told my clients too. My surgeon thinks I'm crazy. I said, I'm going to take off 1 week. He's like, I don't know. You want to be crabby seeing people? You're going to be crabby. So I'm just saying, I'm taking a week. And I
Does
said,
he
well, play it
even
by
know
ear.
who he's dealing with?
No, obviously not. So we'll see. I mean,
You're
I
not going to
keep
let a
telling
little
people I'm
surgery on your
taking the
knee.
week off. I have somebody covering me at work, if my
Mhm.
clinicians need somebody. And I said, we'll play it by ear the second
Yeah,
week.
yeah. I like your optimism.
Yeah. Well,
Oh, we'll find out, right?
yep, that's it.
Next, I wanted to ask you about creativity. So, how do you think your creativity has changed from when you were at the beginning of your career till now? Like, do you think that you thought outside the box back then and tried innovative solutions, or how has that been for you as far as resolving conflicts and getting obstacles out of your way?
Yeah, I think, well, in my youth, um, after I gotten my master's and I was working full-time um, as a social worker in child neurology at a hospital, I then decided to go on for my doctorate. And I had to be pretty creative working full-time and then getting my doctorate in the evening. And still have a life. I mean, I was married. My husband was also going for his doctorate at the same time, so we could spend time in the library every weekend.
Mhm.
But I think whether it's creativity or just a fierce need to, was kind of like always wanting to work. I mean, I'm working full time and I'm getting a doctorate at night. It's, and I think that as I got older, I did take more risks. I think starting that mental health clinic, I started to work with um, women with eating disorders was a big risk. I
Because
funded it because no one had ever done it. And here I am starting a clinic, mental health clinic. And I remember when I went for the hearing about whether they would license, whether the state, New York State would license the clinic, it was all men. I wasn't allowed to speak at it. And they were like, this is a white woman's disease and it's for rich people. So why are we allowing Medicaid to be used? And, and it was seen at the time as it's like, why are you doing this?
they saw no value, right?
Yeah. There aren't poor women don't have problems like this. Really?
Mhm.
Um,
I understand.
so that was a real leap. And as I said, there were periods where I was sure to be able to pay the staff that I did not get paid. So I had to be more creative. I was doing some consulting work. I had a young child. It, and I think as a clinician, I think
Yeah.
as a therapist,
So wait, so what happened with the men? How did you get around them?
no, I didn't. They eventually did agree. There wasn't any real reason to object to
Okay.
licensing it.
Okay.
Um,
So it's just hanging in there.
that was just their little conversation about why are we doing this? It's just white
Mhm.
women's disease. Yeah, okay. Rich white women. Um,
Well, I
so
noticed on LinkedIn, like I thought you were definitely being creative because, first of all, I'd never seen anybody with your skill set on there talking about the things that you were talking about. So I think that you saw that as an opportunity to, um, show yourself and allow people to, see you maybe for possible careers. Because when did I see you on there? Was that before your job? I think it was.
yes, I think it was.
Yeah, I mean, was that one of your strategies at the time to make that as like a
Oh,
step in visibility for employers or no?
I didn't think that would interest employers at all.
Oh, no?
No, I was doing it actually for other women,
Oh, other women.
and professional women who were, on LinkedIn. Um,
I
and
thought
it's
it was such a breath of fresh air. Like I was
yeah,
like, wow, she's talking about this. This is awesome. Because
yeah.
nobody cares about that stuff.
Well, that's it. And what really, and I haven't really been writing religiously the way I was at this point because I'm got a job and
Yeah.
practice. I'm busy. But what really amazes me is how many people, how many women read them. They may not have commented or liked it, but how many didn't? They'll say to me, "I just loved your posts. Why aren't you writing them?" And I'm like, "You
Yeah.
read them?" So yeah, it was really to try and start to raise the issue. Let's talk about this. This is real, what happens.
Are there other women like you talking about this? Because I don't know who they are.
Yes, there
There are.
are.
Okay.
Ashton Applewhite certainly has been, for longer than I have, has been talking.
Okay. Okay. What was her name?
Ashton Applewhite.
Okay.
Ashton Applewhite. Yeah, but there are others, and then there are, people who have been writing books about things. About aging. That's not necessarily so much about women and aging, but yeah, it's we are considered invisible, and so it was funny. I remember one of the pieces that I wrote about. I needed a new PCP, and mine had retired, and my husband also needed one. So we had gotten this referral of a doctor, and while we were waiting, we were having our vitals taken. The doctor walked in. He looks at me. He looks at my husband. He says to my husband, "Doctor, what's your specialty?" I'm the doctor. And then he says, he was probably about my age. I mean, he's probably 70-ish. I mean, wasn't, well, I don't know if a younger person would have even done that. Um, then he says to the technician, oh, bring the young lady into my office when she's done. I'm like, strike two. Because
So,
that's a term that, when they
yes.
say, oh, how can I help the young lady? All these kinds of
Oh,
really horrible
it's
expressions.
obnoxious. It's really
Terrible.
obnoxious.
And then he starts trying to convince me to go on Wegovy. I really got to the point where I almost said to him, how much did you invest in this? That was,
Wait, is that a weight loss drug?
oh, it's like Ozempic. It's basically
Oh,
Ozempic, it's a semaglutide that they've now labeled for,
okay.
weight loss. And it was just starting. And I said, I'm not here for this. I said, I'm fine in my body. And he's like, yes, but your BMI. And I'm like, we don't even use BMI anymore. I said, I'm a eating disorder specialist. And he just wouldn't stop. You're never going to lose weight if it isn't for me. I'm like, what are you not here? I walked out of there like with smoke coming out of my ears.
Mm,
And I
mm.
reported him. I
Oh,
reported him
good.
to the hospital. I was so angry.
That's awesome.
So here he is. His only thing he's looking at me is in terms of weight
Yeah, yeah.
and trying to put me on a weight loss drug, an injection, an injectable. We don't even know the long-term effects of these. So
No, no, I know. And all those people who were objecting to vaccines and they're taking this. So
that's
interesting.
right. Yes, exactly.
So, what's one piece of advice you would give someone who is seeking to make meaning out of this third chapter? For you, it's the second chapter. You never took a break.
That's true.
Some of us are like, I'm in my third because I quit my career and now I'm here. But like for people who need a role model and advice, what would you say to them about living their best lives in their third chapter?
Well, I think one is understanding what is it, how do you want to spend that third chapter? I got married in my third chapter, remarried. So, it depends. I think you just have to, again, stop and look at what you've accomplished, what you've done, what did you enjoy about what you did, and how might you use that in another way in this chapter, or go find a job if that's what you liked. I mean, it's not going to be easy. Um,
And joy is the key factor because, we only have so many days on this planet, and why spend the third chapter being miserable in something, right?
Absolutely. There are realities around finances that gets scarier as you get older, especially, I worked in the nonprofit sector. You don't get a pension. There was no pension. There weren't even salaries that allowed you to do much savings.
Right.
So you get to a point where, what do I need to live? Can I continue to live where I am? And if not, where would I like to go that would be
Right.
fine?
So, I would say, what's next for you, Leslie? But I know that you're just going to say, well, I'm going to keep working. So, if resilience was wiped off the planet tomorrow and you found yourself unemployed, how would you get back in the game now? Or is that too hard of a question?
That is a hard question. I mean, I would like to build up my practice a little bit more, my private practice. I would try and build that up, I guess. Um,
But
and I
I
just,
mean, networking, I think, would be the answer for you because that's
yeah,
how you
that's
get
what,
this job.
exactly. That's what I was going to
I
say.
can't,
That's how I met my husband. I mean, I just kept saying to people, do you know anybody? Do you know a job? Do you know?
yeah. And that paid off.
Yeah, in both areas.
I have an idea now. I just had an idea. We have to have like a network of people 60 and older, just us helping each other find these jobs.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
actually, we do need some young people in there because they're the
Right,
ones.
exactly.
I got
But
to think this one out a little bit.
that's right. Because they're probably the ones who are actually working. Um, but I think that I think one of the things about as we get older is we really value who our friends are and who,
Yes.
what is our support system. I think that that's that's critical. And so many people are isolated,
Mhm,
older people, that that'll kill you faster. And how you think about aging,
mhm,
that there
mhm.
have been studies done on. Becca Levy did a
Your
study.
attitude toward aging.
Yes, and she found that it was they did a longitudinal study in Ohio, I think. I just made it. Yes, for two decades, she followed hundreds of residents about how they felt about aging. And those who had a positive outlook on aging lived 7.5 years longer than those who didn't. And so I think that's also part of it, not to just, think I'm over the hill or whatever, those stupid cards when you hit 70, Um, to think about what it is that we still have, what agency we still have. And we have a lot, so
So that's what you would say, like to someone, well, how do I get a positive attitude about aging? Like, how does one cultivate that? I mean, like you said, you have agency, you have to have agency over yourself, and that's something to appreciate, right? Like, I can still walk 2 miles, I can still do these things, and I can read and learn. There's never been a better time to learn on the planet. Everything is
right.
free. You can learn anything that you want to learn. Like, that's exciting. Like, we never had that before. I mean, yeah, you could read books, but now there's videos,
Yeah,
there's talks, there's just so many ways.
yeah.
So, if people want to learn more about you, Leslie, where would they go?
Well, they could find me on LinkedIn. I don't think there's anybody else in this country with my name. My husband looked once, with Leslie Faerstein. It's Faer.
Okay.
Um, my email is leslieMfairstein@gmail.
One word, Leslie
One,
M.
Leslie M. Fairstein, one word, at Gmail. Um, and I can just Google me.
And you have a beautiful
Got,
website. So,
yes, LeslieMFairstein.com. Yep,
yes, people
it's
can
my website.
really find out what you're about on there. But it has been such a pleasure talking to
Thank
you,
you.
Leslie. You're
You
such a
too.
font of wealth, a font of wealth, a font of information, a wealth of just so many life
First time we're a
experiences.
font of wealth.
You're just a font of everything.
Thank you, Lana. It's been great. It's really been
Thank you
lovely
so
talking.
much.
Thank you.